So, not too long after my imaginary breakup with Boy George, it came out on MTV News that he and Marilyn had been arrested for heroin possession, and it was like all over the media. And I was like, oh, I knew that Marilyn person was a bad influence. There goes that band. And I was just like, I don't even want to do my fashion line anymore. Clearly, I'm needed in the record industry. So I started reading all these books. I started getting all kinds of band biographies and books on the record industry, and reading all the rock magazines that came out. And this is like the mid '80s by now. I'm still in elementary school, so I'm reading all these books, and I'm like, okay, I need a band to promote. So I got to find a new band. So I'm watching MTV one day, of course, and I see the world premiere. There was a world premiere. They used to call them Hip Clip of the Week. So it was a Hip Clip of the Week world premiere video, and that week they were premiering Poison, Talk Dirty to Me. And so that was the first time I saw that band. And I was like, It was a very fun video, if you guys remember. It was very colorful, and, they were like a black stage with neon, silly string. And it was, it was very fun. And, poppy, glam, punkish kind of music. So I was like, boys in makeup. I was like, I can work with this. So instead of playing fashion line, I now transitioned over to playing music promoter. And I bought the record, Look What the Cat Dragged In. And I used to remember the double cassette tape things, the big stereos that your parents used to have, like the huge speakers. I used to copy, because I got a cassette tape. I had to have the tape and the vinyl, of course. I don't know why. But I used to make copies of the cassette. I'd buy the blank cassettes and make copies of the Poison's album, Look What the Cat Dragged In, and hand them out to the kids at school. And I was like, you guys check this out. This is like my new favorite band, and they're really good, and you should get into them. So I started like converting kids at school to into being Poison fans. I ended up getting like some like a little clique of friends at this point. I had my first like little girl clique of friends that we were like these little Poison groupies. Where most kids were playing, I guess we were about 10 at this time. So I don't really know what most kids were playing as far as imagination land goes, because it was like past the point of playing house. But I guess people would like still play different imaginary adventure games. Well, what we would do is because in my house, because I lived in a big house, we had a finished basement. So instead of like being off in the playroom where the Barbies used to be, because I was, kind of grown out of that, we would go down in the basement, and we constructed a tour bus, a fake tour, instead of a fort. It was a fort. It was a tour bus fort. We constructed a tour bus fort. It's sheets and cots, like mattresses that we set up, like the bunks and stuff. And we would take pillows, and we would buy all kinds of, glam scarves and hats and stuff like that at the mall, and we would put them on the pillows and set them up and pretend that they were the guys in Poison, and that we were hanging out on the tour bus with them after the show, and that they were our boyfriends, and blah, 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 blah. And sometimes, sometimes we would switch roles, and like we would be Poison, like we would dress up as them, so we were kind of doing like reverse drag. But it went back and forth. Like sometimes we were the band, and sometimes we were the band's girlfriend, and the pillows were the band. But yeah, so, and as I got older, once I hit junior high, because I had gone to a couple concerts in elementary school. My family had taken me to a couple. I saw Howard Jones and Suzanne Vega, like a couple like pop acts that my sisters liked. And then finally I did get to see Poison, because I think I was like 9 or 10, but I freaked out because they were opening up for David Lee Roth, and I like threw a fit. I was like, you have to take me, or I'm gonna destroy the universe. And so my family, they took me, and I got to see Poison from a distance, because I was like, still a little kid. But once I got like a little bit more savvy, once I got into junior high, And I was still too young to really have like a nightlife on the weekends. So nightlife was watching Headbangers Ball on Saturday night, which came on at midnight. So you'd either like, get special permission to stay up late and watch it, or kind of sneak down after everyone's asleep and watch it. But earlier in the evening, there used to have this show called Pirate Radio that would come on the local rock station, which was, I think, WAAF, I believe, in Massachusetts was the station, I think, that it came across. It was only on Saturday nights, and it was broadcast out of LA. And it was, it was like a glam metal show that was Saturday nights only, where they would play like all the up and coming bands that were going on in LA at the time, as well as the ones that were already successful. And I mean, of course I listened to every single Saturday night. Like, that was my Saturday night, instead of sitting up in my room drawing my, my fashion designs with my imaginary Boy George friend, I was now, listening to Pirate Radio, and calling in, because you could call in, because every week they would have a different rock star that would be a special guest that you could call in and ask questions. And of course, it was like that thing where you're like dialing the number over and over and over again, and back when we like heard things like busy lines. But anyway, so every week I would do this, and I got through like a lot of times. There was like several bands that I met from actually getting through and getting to talk to them. Well, one day Bret Michaels was the special guest, and I was like, yes. And and they were on tour. They were about to leave for tour, and I had tickets already. Because now I'm like, I was about, I guess I must have been 14, because that's when I got my first backstage pass. So at this point, I'm 14. So Pirate Radio was going on for a good few years. But Bret Michaels was on, and I had tickets to the show that was coming up in like, a month or something. So I called in and I got through. And of course, I'm going to specify, because he didn't do anything wrong. He did not know I was 14 years old, but I asked, my question was, oh, how do I meet you guys? I said I want to meet the band, I have tickets to your show, and like, how would I go about meeting you guys? Well, and Bret told me, he said, he actually gave me the name of the tour manager at the time, and he said, get there. He's like, here's how it works. You go to, show up to the venue early, like when we're doing sound check, which was like, somewhere between 3 and 5. And he's like, if you look cute and you ask for, I'm not going to say the guy's name now, but you ask for blah, blah, and tell him that, that you want a backstage pass, he'll likely give them to you, tell him that I told you, to drop his name. So it's really, really kind of funny. So, like, we did this, like, me and my girlfriend at 14, this time we were actually escorted by one of my older sisters, so we were okay, this time, but, we dressed up, like, in the 80s, like, the mini dresses, and, like, full-on glam, and, I actually developed early, so I easily passed for 18. I look back at the pictures, and like when I look back at the pictures, I'm like, no, I look like I'm 12, but at the time I felt like I passed for 18, and I'm sure I passed for like at least 16, which is still kind of shady, but whatever. Anyway, so we ended up getting our backstage passes. Oh, and I will say that when I was on the phone with Bret, he did warn me. He said, they might ask you, if you're talking to the road crew about backstage passes, they might ask you to do something for them. And I'll never forget, this conversation. He said, you wouldn't do anything like that, would you? And I knew what he was talking about, because I, like I said, I had read tons of books and tons of magazines, and we had older sisters, so I knew exactly what he was talking about. I was not naive in that sense at all. And I said, no, I wouldn't. I was like, don't worry, I wouldn't do anything like that. He's like, okay, good. So, so I kept my word, and we went to the show, and, we went to the sound check, and we found the guy, and, yeah, it took a little bit of finagling, because he did try to proposition us, for sexual favors, and, we were just like, no, 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 and then my older sister, who, it was like I have a lot of sisters, so it was like my way older sister. I think she was like already in her 20s. She was like they're underage. But I think we ended up like paying him. Like I think we ended up giving him like a couple $100. And she kind of like handled it for us. But we got our backstage passes, and that was my first backstage pass. Was for Poison, and yeah, we went backstage, and I met the band that night, and they were really sweet. I mean, I'm 14, so all I really knew how to do was like, oh, can I have your autograph? I love you. And I remember like I hit it off with Ricky Rocket, which is funny because we ended up being friends later, like way later in life. But like I kind of connected with him. He was really, really sweet. I remember like just giving him a hug and being like, oh, I love you. And he was like, oh, I love you too. And he was just like really, really nice. And then that was it. So that was my transition from being married to Boy George and having a fashion line to being a music promoter and working for Poison in my head anyway. And I think I like wanted to marry CeCe DeVille, but I was too shy. I saw him backstage, but I was like too shy to talk to him even. Because that's like always how I am. When I always end up like, I'll connect with the person that I kind of like see just as a friend, but like the one that I'm like, that I'm hot for, I'm always like, I'm always like, oh, I'm always like super shy. So I didn't get to meet CeCe till like a million years later, as far as talking to him. But yeah, that was how I transitioned. And then I also around that time also started playing guitar. So that's where my life hanging out with bands and playing rock and roll began. So make sure you stick around and subscribe to my channel, because as I grow up, you will see the stories of my life in rock and roll become more and more crazy and interesting as time goes on. Keep it real, you guys.